Here we go again.
No, not again.
You've been fooled.
How long have we been doing this?
Once more unto the bridge.
Again, until we're both dead.
Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, movie reviews and connections in mind. Incredibles 2 has finally hit theaters after a 14-year-long wait between the original and the sequel, and it once again stars the voice talents of Craig T. Nelson, Helen Hunt, and Samuel L. Jackson, among others. And this time around, we once again pick up right where we left off after the original Incredibles with the Parr family wrapped up in superhero business, and they're trying once again to learn how to be super in a world where superheroes are illegal. And they have a new villain to tackle, that of the Screenslaver. And Helen Parr, aka Elastigirl, is given the task of defeating Screenslaver, while Mr. Incredible is left at home in order to take care of the kids. Now, this video review will contain spoilers of Incredibles 2, as well as certain other films and TV series. There will be a full list in the description below. And if you've not seen Incredibles 2 yet, or any of the films listed below, and want to wait until you have, stop the video at this point and come back later. But with these things in mind though, let's begin. So one of the fun things about the original Incredibles is that it didn't have a pre-established history of comic book history of its own, so it was able to pull from a bunch of other genres of films, playing off the tropes of superhero comics, as well as the spy genre, and it was able to blend these together in order to create its own product. And Incredibles 2 is no exception to this, and instead of calling it being ripping off these things, we can call these homages to films that have come previously. From the spy genre, I would say, when Mr. Incredible sees that he gets the Incredi-car is in the possession of a billionaire, and he ends up getting it back, and all the gadgets used in the Incredi-car are used against the villains, and he is able to use the Incredi-car for his own purposes with these gadgets. I would say this is an homage to Skyfall, in which James Bond ends up reusing his most famous vehicle, the 1964 Aston Martin DB5, which was tricked out with all of these cool gadgets, and he's able to use that car to turn the tide against the villains there. In the superhero genre, I would say there's homage in the way this film picks up right as the first Incredible ends, mainly with the Parr family having to battle the Underminer. And though Incredibles 2 does deal with these events, it is told through the viewpoint of Tony Reininger, Violet's potential love interest, from the first film into the second film. And it's told from a new perspective. We get to see different perspective on these events, and I would say this is an homage to Spider-Man Homecoming, in which we see a participant in the events of Captain America Civil War relive the events of that film from a different perspective than the audience saw the first time around, mainly Spider-Man's participation in the airport scene in Captain America Civil War. Also, the superhero genre, Incredibles 2 also features the mind control of several superheroes by the villain for the villain's own purpose. And they use this through the use of these hypnotic goggles, and some of our more beloved heroes also fall under their control. And this is very reminiscent of X2 X-Men United, in which several mutants are manipulated and mind controlled by Stryker for his purposes, and most notably when Cyclops falls under his control as well, and he's forced to battle Jean Grey in this regard. But there's another connection that can be made with this mind control thing, mainly the fact that the mind control being used through an ocular device, and people are running, and our heroes are running around being chased by the people who are already mind controlled, and they're trying to slap these goggles onto them so that they can be mind controlled themselves. This is reminiscent of the Star Trek Next Generation episode, The Game, in which a hypnotic game is introduced into the crew of the Enterprise, and what it does is it uses beams this image directly onto your eyes, and while it feels like it's just an ordinary game, it's actually making the users susceptible to suggestion, and Wesley Crusher is the only one left who is able to resist. He's the only one left unaffected by these devices, so he's being chased by all these people who were formerly his friends but are under mind control, trying to get him to use the game ocular device on him so that he would be mind controlled as well, and then the ship would be theirs. So with all this being said, of course, the main thing is, should you see Incredibles 2? Absolutely. This is definitely a very fun film. There's great humor along with this. I mean, it feels that if there's any complaint that it could be given against it, is that it feels a little more kiddie than the last one, mainly because there's a lot more focus on Jack and his powers, which are still fun, of course, but I feel like that's aimed a little more at the younger audience rather than the adults, but that's not necessarily a bad thing in this regard. Of course, The Incredibles is a kids' film, so that's not really a big concern there. But also, I would say, at least in my initial impression, I would say it's somehow just doesn't feel as special as the original, because one, the villain isn't as good as Syndrome from the first Incredibles, so that makes it automatically weaker. But also, when the first Incredibles came out in 2004, there were really not a whole lot of superhero films. I mean, Spider-Man 2 came out that year, but other than that, we just had a couple of X-Men films, and that was it for the beginning of the rebirth of modern comic book films. So, I mean, it was kind of in a league of its own, but now we've already had Black Panther and Avengers Infinity War already this year from Disney, and then The Incredibles 2 comes out, and then we're going to have Ant-Man and the Wasp next month. So there's just so much superhero stuff already in a saturated market. It just feels, while it is a good superhero film, it's just another in a long series of good superhero films. So automatically, it just feels less special than the original. But with all that being said, of course, it's still worth your time. It is a fun film. I'd say definitely go check it out if you haven't already. Or if you have already, go see it again. Bring someone else who hasn't. They'll enjoy it. So, there's my review of Incredibles 2. I appreciate whatever audience I can get, and I appreciate you making it to the end of this video. To look for my next video review, which will be for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. And yeah, just thank you so much for watching, and just remember, there is nothing new under the sun, and yes, you have seen it before.